good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to see so many people turn up this early in the morning. Obviously, it's first day, so it's very, very kind of you to come and join us here. I guess it's because of the panelists, high-powered executives. We're talking about consolidation, joining forces for the greater good, and what that means, and how virtual integration and putting the producers, the distributors, and potentially also the platforms together in one company makes sense. And we'll start with Carrie Stein, who recently joined Q Media. Welcome. And maybe she can tell us a little bit about what it means to start from scratch.
It's really hard.
Great.
Yeah. That's it. Good morning, everyone. I joined Q about 8 months ago, and I was formerly at E1 running their global scripted division, which is similar to my role at Q, only Q Media is about 18 months old. And so the structure of Q is that they acquired, so far, 14 companies, the majority of which are unscripted. There are 3 or 4 scripted companies. So in building our scripted division, certainly one part of my responsibility is working with those production companies who are already in the scripted space. But then in addition to that, we are building our own slate and very aggressively going out and finding other ways to get on base quickly. Because, you know, as you probably know, when you're building a new company, you want to build it quickly and effectively. And if all you're doing is looking at projects, that could take 2 to 3 years. So we are looking at acquisitions of strong scripted companies around the world. We're looking for strategic partnerships. And I would say that there's a strong entrepreneurial spirit at Q, which is what attracted me to join the company. And what I heard last night from the senior management is we have to get big quick. So that's the mission. And that's exciting, because that means that the ambition is strong and things get through pretty quickly because they know that's what's needed to build a prolific slate.
Thanks. I mean, I have to say you've just joined and you still already have a clip to show. That's quite something, which has been produced, and I don't know when it's going to go out, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. But
I'm going to take full responsibility for producing the show.
You should.
So the clip we're going to show is called The Bletchley Circle, which may be familiar to some of you. It aired on ITV several years ago, and had critical acclaim. I guess it was opposite another very big show on one of the other channels, and it didn't rate as well as it needed to get reordered. And so Jonathan Ford, who heads up our sales, and Greg Phillips, who runs our distribution business, really loved the show and wanted to figure out a way to do more of it. And this is a great example of what's needed today to not only get a project going, but to keep it on the air. And so what they did is they talked to a company called Omni in Vancouver, and they had the notion to bring in a Canadian partner. And so what they did is they took this original series, they reset it in San Francisco, and they got Bell on board in Canada, BritBox in the US, and then at the last minute, ITV came back on board. 2 of the original cast are in this new adaptation, and it launched a few weeks ago to very good ratings, and they're in discussions for another season. So that's, you know, you can't, it's not just about reading a script and saying this looks like a good idea. You know, all of us on this panel spend hours and weeks and months driving every single project forward, and I think Bletchley is a great example of that.
Well, let's watch it.
In the war, you were clerical.
Enhanced clerical. It means, sir, that I did more than I can say.
So, I assume we're celebrating.
They rejected me.
Oh. You're suggesting we travel to San Francisco?
What is it you actually do? Same thing we did in the war. Crack codes, recognize patterns.
It's a funny way to spend a vacation.
One of our many unusual British amusements.
Is this their excuse for a chip?
They call it a fry, apparently.
Quite an abuse of vegetables.
Not the safest thing, walking through the neighborhood of a known killer.
Sarge told me we were gonna solve a murder.
But I can't see anything in the now.
People don't just walk in here and solve crimes.
I only have
We've done it before. Well, bully for you.
Only the smartest women were chosen as co-workers. I found out that I was one of them. There's no pattern.
There is always a pattern, we just haven't found it yet.
Looks great. I have to say, I think it also shows how international co-productions can work in many different ways. I think taking a project from the UK and, you know, working it now in San Francisco is a fantastic way of bringing people together in an organic way, rather than trying to build it from scratch and that it feels right, and looks great.
Yeah, and BritBox coming in for them, this is a big original, and they've promoted it. And that's exciting also. You know, there are a lot of new channels around the world who are launching original production, which is very difficult to do because, you know, they don't have the promotional dollars to spend that some of the bigger channels do. And they don't develop as much or acquire as much. So when they get something that works, and this is working very well for them, they put a lot of energy behind it.
Great. So we'll move out to Jakob, and now the last name is obviously a slight problem, so Mejlhede. I hope that's right. He's the EVP and Group Head of Content at Nordic Entertainment Group. Welcome. Can I ask you how your business has changed since the arrival of Netflix in your home market?
Thank you. Well, I mean, we've been changing our business since the get-go, since we started. We started out as a very strong entertainment offering, tailoring to all the needs of the dear consumers in the Nordic region, down across Central Eastern Europe, Africa, and whatnot. We quickly saw some changes in viewing behavior, and I think that got strengthened by the entrance of Netflix in particular. We saw more viewing shifting to OTT and online, but we had already noticed that move before we launched something called Viasat On Demand a couple of years before Netflix entered the market, and we probably were of the opinion that the Nordic region would be fast movers when it came to this, well, what became a seismic change in viewing patterns. And I'm grateful that we started launching SVOD, our Viaplay service, very early. So the offering today is as strong as it is. But we've always been trying to anticipate what is the next move and the next big change and adopt accordingly.
Great. So do you produce to air or produce to sell or produce to co-produce? Or
you could say our primary focus is to build the strongest Nordic streaming offering. And a part of that is producing, a part of that is licensing, a part of that is co-producing. Whenever we work with a piece of content, we want to make sure that we get as much out of it as possible. Both, our viewers should have a great experience, but we also, of course, value all the other financial or economical aspects that is in the whole content game. So we do both, and we try to marry those two ambitions as well as we can.
I think we've got a clip that shows those ambitions. Maybe we can just have a look, and then you can tell us a little bit about it. Or
well, I mean, it's a clip that was for an internal presentation, so it is a little bit braggish in its style, but that's how it goes. Let's have a look.
It's a big world out there, full of stories, and we want to be the ones telling them. Nordic Entertainment Group, with the best original content, has become the leading storyteller in the Nordics.
Such a short amount of time.
Vi har aldrig haft ett så här starkt spår.
Not only have our Viaplay originals smashed it locally, they're kicking all over the world. So much so that the media has taken notice, showering us with glowing reviews and shiny awards. So now we can relax and bask in our success, right? Wrong. We're kicking it into gear. By 2020, we will have produced well over 50 titles, while also taking a huge leap with our studio business in the US. Stamping our Nordic footprint on the gigantic world markets. Thus, we'll be able to expand and meet the demands for our popular content.
It's a beautiful world.
We have top production companies producing hard-hitting drama series and even harder-hitting action. These are the ingredients with which Nordic Entertainment Group will keep spreading Nordic storytelling all over the world.
It's not called bragging when you deliver.
Pretty low key, yeah. Well, I think we are so well positioned when it comes to our offering of networks, premium services, and SVOD that it would be a shame not to dive into this whole Nordic potential that we see, both from the say broadcasting angle, but certainly also from the production angle, and we're doing that with all the great companies we have gathered under NENT Studios. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years.
Thank you. So welcome Caroline Torrance. She's the head of scripted at Banijay Rights. I would like to ask first, how early do you get involved in the projects, and does it make a difference whether that approach is with independent or external producers?
Morning, everyone. Well, I actually have a role across Banijay Rights and the Banijay Group, and I work with our scripted producers in the group. So I get involved at the kind of really, really earliest stages. So when they're just very kind of germs of ideas, the producers will come and talk to me and say, you know, do you think that this is an idea that we could co-produce somewhere, or somewhere that we could sell really well? So very early. In terms of our third-party producers we work with, equally, they come to us at a very early stage. We've got a lot of good relationships with a number of producers, and they'll come and talk to us again at that kind of very early stage. We have some development funding that we can put towards third-party producers' projects. So it's kind of really as early as people want to come and talk to us.
Would you say that the strategies that you then develop with them in terms of financing changes their creative drive?
No, because I think it's really, really important that an idea is has its basis in its creative idea, and it's got a voice, and it's got authorship, and all those things. If you try and engineer something, it just doesn't work.
No, obviously, but then if you have one voice at a table, it might be different than having multiple voices, which obviously is a question of financing in a way. So.
No, and in fact, interesting, the clip that I'm going to show in a minute is quite an interesting example, because I organise for our group companies twice a year. We all get together and we have a kind of creative brainstorm, and we talk about ideas and talk about exactly, you know, how we can join together and how we can work together. And this was an idea that was pitched at one of those creative meetings, and almost immediately Mastiff in Denmark. This was pitched by Screen Time in New Zealand, and they always had in their mind that it would be set between either the UK and New Zealand or the US and New Zealand. But actually Mastiff in Denmark looked at this idea and they thought, well, actually, this is a fantastic idea, and we think we can make it work between Denmark and New Zealand. And then we got TV3 on board, we got 9 on board, and then we got Viaplay on board. And we're going to launch it at this market. It's called Straightforward. And we've got a clip to show. So
yeah, let's watch it.
Hello, love.
Hi, Far. Hey.
Let's go. Freezing. Taxi's on its way. started.
Steal his damn money. As much of it as we fucking can.
Get out the fucking car! Go! Get down! Get down!
You're a thief, right? I see opportunities where people are greedy. And then I exploit them.
I'm looking for Desmond Peterson's daughter. I want to find her and lock her up.
You leave her for me.
Why are you running away?
I'm her. I'm all these people.
I know you've got secrets. I don't care. I know who you are.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hvad sker der så nu? Hiv.
Is it right that you can also announce something about this clip, or?
Yes, so, and following that Screen Time New Zealand, we are announcing at this market as well that they're going to be starting a new co-production, collaboration between Lippy Pictures and Screen Time with Letterbox in Germany and ZDF on a project called The Gulf. So they, moving on from this one, they're kind of developing lots more co-productions, and they're seeing that really as a way forward.
Great. So Romain Bessi, he's the managing director of Newen Group. Can I ask you, where do you see the benefits in being vertically integrated? Meaning, you're owned by TF1, you're a distributor, and you're a production entity, or you have a conglomerate of production entities underneath your belt.
Well, I don't really see ourselves as being vertically integrated, because for TF1 it's more of a diversification rather than integration. So it's one of our clients. Would be like 10 or 15% of our turnover goes with TF1, and the rest goes with all the other players in France and in many other territories. But the thing is, we are a very large production group in France. We have a lot of, we're kind of a club with 30 producers or 30 labels in France, in Netherlands, in Denmark, and we're going to expand in other territories. And we see that the benefit of having an investor like TF1 is just that when you want to grow your company, when you want to do more ambitious series, well, you need support. And you either have the support from financial investors or long-term strategic investors. So we feel that with TF1 we can we have the ability to have a very long-term approach and build a very sustainable production group in Europe.
Can you tell us how, or if, your client base has changed since the arrival of TF1?
Yeah, pretty much, because before the company was independent, but actually was working almost only with France Télévisions. And the good thing is that there's been some sort of a reaction in the market, so we had to diversify our portfolio of clients. And then now we work, for instance, we are the only production company in France to work with both Netflix and Amazon, because we have a series produced for both of them at the same time. We work for all the networks in France, all the pay TVs. So yes, now it's more balanced, equally balanced. And since we're going to all the markets, then of course it's another way to diversify our portfolio.
Great. So I think to look at how diverse your portfolio is, you brought us a clip.
Yeah, you see it's very diverse, because we produce 1,000 hours per year, 300 hours of drama. So it's pretty long. Sorry for that.
So let's watch the clip.
Le boulot avant. Dis-moi ce qui se passe, Polter, c'est quoi?
va se passer. Hein.
J'aime bien le conditionnel, ça devrait.
Comment ça, t'es content du résultat?
Oh la vache!
Carlos ook niet jouw vader is.
Ai.
Bonjour Marina.
Bonjour Marina.
Régis, bonjour.
Bonjour Marina, bonjour à tous.
Bonsoir, bienvenue sur le plateau de Ça ne sortira pas d'ici.
On répondra à vos questions sur l'incontinence urinaire.
Non, non merci, sans façon.
Une enquête éclair pour mettre hors d'état de nuire un homme particulièrement dangereux.
Sans personne aux commandes, le Kursk n'est plus qu'un monstre des mers incontrôlable. La catastrophe est inévitable.
For the first time, these sources enable us to sneak inside the head of the monster.
C'est pas très joyeux.
Well, thank you, and thank you for including a show that we are doing together. That's nice to see. So that's always good. So I had my clip here as well. That's good. Thanks.
He just slipped that in last night.
Yeah, that's why it's so long.
I wanted him to be nice.
So, we can open up the discussion now a little bit, talk about expansion and talking about integrating producers or talent and what makes more sense and whether it's something that is a strategy, meaning should we start to do long-term deals with writers and creatives in order to get them attached to the different companies, or is it the producers who've got their relationships with the talent and we try to get those? You were saying grow fast, so.
I'm a big believer in the strength of a producer. And I think that our sort of philosophy at Q is to be a great partner to producers, to support them in whatever they need, whether that's development funding, a pre-sale, distribution, and that it doesn't have to be everything. We have a unique situation at Q in that of the 14 companies that we have acquired, they do not have to distribute through Q, which is very different from my experience in the past. And when I was first considering joining the company, I thought, how does that work? But I think the way it works is that if you're aligned for the long term, then in the long term, it all works. Obviously, we like our companies to bring their shows to us, and I guess the notion is if we do a good job, they'll want to work with us. But in terms of packaging a show, I really believe that producers should do what producers do. I package every show we pursue differently. Sometimes, it's the high-end writer. Sometimes if there's already a script and there's a strong central character that just begs to have an A-list actor, we'll go out to an A-list actor. I find you can spend a lot of time trying to package something months. And by the time you get it all ready to go out, someone else has sold something in the same space. So what I hear from buyers over and over again, and I've been a buyer, is that they read the script, and if the script is good and gets their attention, then they're interested in moving forward. And it doesn't really matter how many bells and whistles you've attached to it. If the script isn't good, they're not gonna pursue it. And so I've even spent less attention of late on Bibles. You know, I think we've gotten into this culture because it's such a competitive market. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. It's the most competitive marketplace I've ever experienced. And so there's a tendency to think you've got to have 3 scripts and a Bible and a star and a director. But honestly, if the script is good and the idea is distinct and they believe in the auspices, they'll move forward.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There is a lot of pressure on the producers, I think, from OTT platforms and linear channels to deliver a piece of talent, often, whether that's a writer or an actor, and then occasionally, you know, you do a series with, like we co-produced with Kappa Versailles, and they were largely a completely unknown cast. And it has been a phenomenal hit. So for every example you can find, I think, of something that was packaged with a really top-flight writer, top-flight talent, really well-known talent, there's another example of a series that kind of made the stars, in fact. So I think it's...
Versailles has a name that is a star, I guess.
Yes,
that
exactly.
helps.
Yeah, that helps.
Okay. And apart from Jakob, do you all have ideas to actually do your own platforms? Is that something that might be on the horizon for anyone? Self-distribute, maybe?
I hope so.
No, but it's a
the
question.
Carrie Stein channel.
I'm not sure I would do that. I'm not sure that would please our shareholder.
No. Okay. Well, if there's a clear no or maybe, then that's probably not something.
No, I think that's we're on the right side, I would say, producing content and selling content to different parties. And I don't think that would be the right position for us to be in a position to buy content and bring it to the consumers. I think we're in the business of bringing ideas and then try to optimize the value of these ideas, selling it to many different people. So I don't. That's why having a shareholder like TF1 is a way to. It's a new opportunity that doesn't prevent us from working with all the others. But going into the step of having a platform on our own, I don't think that would be good for our talents and our producers.
Yeah, I think. You know, the interesting thing, I think, is the way that we can work with all different types of, you know, looking across here, I think Carrie and I aren't currently working together, but we're working with Kappa, it's part of Newen, we're working a lot with Viaplay, and we work with all different channels around the world, and that gives us an opportunity as a big production group to do that. We need to find a project to work together on, obviously.
I think it's probably fair to say that the way the market is moving now, where we are finding different partners in a project, you marry a lot of different interests in the project. There's distribution interest, there's the streaming interest, so there's a lot of different commercial aspects that suddenly flow into a project. So we're all learning about what is the subscription game and what is the distribution game. And I think it creates some new interesting models and ideas for how the business is going to develop moving forward. And I strongly believe co-productions is that field where we can all find new good solutions.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, there are 2 interesting initiatives we're working on. Well, one isn't really an initiative, but Jakob and I are working on a couple of projects together that we're co-funding, which is really exciting. The idea that we have found 2 projects, very different, and the funding mechanism is different in each one, but we will together be able to greenlight those 2 productions without, you know, another sort of standard premium channel or US channel. And that's exciting for our business. And I think back to a couple of years ago when the whole notion of funding production came up, and I just thought that was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard. I thought, you know, there's so many channels out there, you really want to have your partners on board before you start. I feel very differently today. Maybe it's convenient for me, but I think it's a necessity, is what I would say. And both of those projects have budget levels. They're not super cheap. I mean, they're real budgets, but they have budget levels that can be managed between us. So that's incredible. And the other initiative is we recently signed a deal with Channel 5 in the UK, where we are their co-financing and distribution partner. And Channel 5 traditionally has been more in the acquisition business than in the originals business, and they're making a big leap into producing their own content. And it was an opportunity that came from a strong relationship. I should say that, that although Q is only 18 months old, one of the companies that Q acquired is a company that was called Content Media, which has been a distributor for 20 years. And Content Media has now been rebranded as Q Media Distribution, which is the reason we actually have a clip and have a library, and we're at the market with, you know, many, many, many new titles. But the Channel 5 deal came from a relationship, and that's exciting. So while it's not our platform, we certainly now have a relationship with Channel 5 where we have conversations about the shows that are being considered. So that's exciting.
The changes for the streaming platforms of having to produce more local, more European content, is that changing what you're developing right now? Because obviously there is a lot of money that will flow the European way because of the European laws. Is that something that you're already taking into account?
Well, obviously yes, because we are already a European producer, so that's a new opportunity for us. So of course that's one of the reasons also why we're expanding in Europe, because we see that it's, I mean, non-English drama is actually improving in Europe quite a lot, circulating a lot, the formats, the finished product. So it's a great opportunity for us, and we're happy that there are many platforms out there, and because we can combine then the opportunities with all the local actors. We know how to please them, we know how to bring them good content for them. But now that there's a new need for this kind of content, that's obviously an opportunity for our producers.
Yes, I mean, equally, I mean, Banijay is a big European group, and we have production companies in France, in Italy, in Germany, and Spain, and they're all increasing what they're developing and producing, and it's a real growing market.
But wouldn't it not, in a way, because it's obviously, if it's a platform, they will want to take all rights, would that not kind of, yes, it's great for the producers within the group, but it kind of hurts the distributor in the group?
Yes, I mean, it's something that we talk about a lot, and obviously if you do a deal with the Netflix and the Amazons, then in all likelihood they want to take the world. But we work really closely with our producers sort of early on to discuss a strategy for a particular program, and we see that it's actually really good news that they are producing for some of these OTT platforms, even though as a distribution company we won't necessarily have any of the rights. But it's very good for the production business, and because we're such an integrated group, and as I said, I work kind of across both, I can kind of work and see it from both sides, really.
Yeah, that's the same for us. I mean, we're also production and distribution, but distribution I see as a support function, so to say, because it's here to help. And of course, if it makes sense for the project to be sold to a platform, and meaning that we would lose all this distribution right, so be it. And we're happy that we're producing 2 series for Netflix and 1 for Amazon. And we're not producing less for all the traditional players, so it's marginal increase in production, so that's benefit anyway.
We're going through every single drawer and cupboard to see if we have some old library we can sell them.
Sounds very good. So we've got kind of 5 minutes left. If we want to open up the questions to the floor, I don't know whether we've got microphones out there. Otherwise, please. Oh yes, we do. Wonderful. So are there any questions? Come on. I know it's early, but you've made it. No questions. None. Oh yeah, there we go. If someone starts, then hopefully it will get better soon. We've got one over here.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, it is very early because I hardly have any voice. This is a question for Jakob. I'm curious whether you would ever consider cooperating with another platform operating in the same territory as you. that would be really for the greater good against Netflix and Amazon?
Absolutely, I think it's very straightforward. We have great cooperations with other broadcasters, which is relatively straightforward. But at the end of the day, it's about finding a windowing structure that works for both parties. But I completely embrace that. I think as the more we can cooperate, the greater strength and greater offering we will have to give our dear subscribers and customers.
We had a question here. Yeah.
Yes, good morning. Thanks very much for coming in. The question is that, is there anything that you've done in the past that you have turned down or passed on that you wish you had now, based on the change in the environment with OTT?
That's a no.
No, it's a great question, but no, I don't think there's anything. It's still a fairly new market. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot which I wish I'd said yes to and also no to, but we are all learning as we go.
Yeah, and in terms of distribution, we get to look at a lot of projects, and I think there are probably projects that I wish we'd got that we didn't, as we're in a competitive situation. But I can't think of anything that I turned down and then went to be a big worldwide hit. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I guess there are those where one thinks, okay, I could have done this, but they don't necessarily make financial sense in the end, and then it's a question of would you have done it for the cachet that the company would have earned, but not necessarily for the money.
I think the other thing that I would add, what I've learned, it's taken a long time, is we put so much effort into every project that we get on screen that you have to believe in it personally. You just have to respond to it. And we all respond to different things. And so I might read something that someone elsewhere thinks is fantastic, and I don't respond. And that's just the way it works.
I guess that looking into the glass bowl of the future is something that we're all very, very curious about, with now Apple coming to the table, and it looks like they want to be a studio rather than the Netflix and the Amazon, where they want us as their content producers. Do you think that will change the world again? Will Amazon and Netflix maybe follow suit and start to produce themselves like Apple is trying?
Well, I think Netflix is absolutely producing themselves. I mean, word is out that they're not interested in studio partners unless they need a piece of content. They're going straight to writers, straight to producers, and I'm not anti-Netflix at all. I think they've brought a huge amount of energy into our business. And I think that there are certain projects that make sense for the streamers. I think we all have projects that, I mean, you are a streamer, but, we're happy to sell we'd be thrilled to sell The Crown to Netflix or Apple, that kind of a project. That's a great piece of business. And I think we all have to take a portfolio approach and know that some projects will be put together in a more conventional way, and then there's co-production, and then there's SVOD.
I mean, scripted production and distribution is just booming at the moment. There are so many different channels and different outlets who are looking for a sort of their channel-defining piece of content, that there's so many people to talk to that I think it's a really great time to be in our business.
Oh, I want to thank you everyone for being here, thanking our panelists for getting up bright and early and looking fresh after yesterday night. I know we all didn't go to bed that early. I'm sure you didn't either. Thank you for being here, and wishing you a great market.